Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The appearance day of Lord Ramachandra is what we're observing today, the ninth day of the moon, Navami. And I'd like to begin with a little explanation of where Lord Ramachandra fits in the whole picture of the source of all avatars, Govinda, and all of the other avatars that emanate from him. Because, of course, our Bhagavatam teaching is that Krishna is to Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the original source of all of the avatars. And Sri Brahma Samhita confirms the same. We're familiar with this verse, text 39 from Brahma Samhita. Compliments of Mahatma Prabhu, we can sing it together. Uh-oh. It's not playing. Oh, Damodar, what's going on? Let's go back. Let's go back. Here we go. Krishna Swayam So that's Lord Rama's position. He's in the category of Kala, Kala Niyamena. He's a plenary portion. And the original from which he is the plenary portion is Govinda. Krishna Svayam Samabhavat. He appears as one of the expansions of Krishna. Rama Adi, the Bhakti Siddhanta translation is Rama, etc., or beginning with Ram. His position is so celebrated. Let's take a look at, where he fits in the whole picture. I worship Govinda. There we see Lord Brahma in the lower right corner, and he's visiting in Vrindavan, and he's seeing Govinda, who is pictured in the center there, and the various expansions of Narayana forms and the potencies of Narayana, which are unlimited, personified, and so forth. There's celestial beings in the sky. It's a nice painting. But Govinda is the original. He is the primeval Lord who manifested himself personally as Krishna, Krishna Svayam Samabhava. And from him come various avatars. And the different avatars in the world in the forms of Nrsinga, Rama, Nrsinga, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions. That's Bhaktisiddhanta's language. Subjective portions. Subjective, there's object and subject. So Krishna is the object and the expansions are his subjective portions. And you all see the various 12 principal Leela avatars surrounding Krishna, including Krishna himself and Balaram down there. But just above them, Rama and Sita in the forest, and all of the other avatars. So these are his subjective portions, Kala Niyamena. Krishna is the original. A celebrated, now in ISKCON celebrated at least, poster depicting another verse from Brahma Samhita. At the very top is Golokadam, and below Golokadam is Haridam, and below Haridam is Shivadam, and below Shivadam is Devidam. So that little globe at the bottom, egg-shaped object, that's one universe, inside of which is Garbhodakshai Vishnu and the 14 planetary systems within the stem of the lotus that's growing from his navel and Brahma at the top. The coverings of the universe and so many other universes floating in the causal ocean. And beyond all of that is Shivadam. So it's the same as the verse in Brahma Samhita. Golokanamni Nija Damni, his own Dham. Nija Damni, Tale Chatasya Devi. Bhaktisiddhanta says it's Brahma speaking, looking up from his realm. Devi Dham, Shiva Dham or Mahesh Dham. Above that is Haridam, and above that is Golokadam. So we're going to take a closer look, see what's in between Haridam and Golokadam. You can see that looks like burst of sunlight there in the middle, in between the two. Here's the closer image. At the bottom is Ayodhya Dham. And Ayodhya Dham is at the upper region of Haridam. It's at the upper region of Haridam because unlike Haridam, the rest of Haridam, there's a degree of intimacy or sweetness that is not found in the rest of Haridam. For example, eternally situated in Haridam, in Ayodhya Dham, is Ram's mother and father. We don't have a situation with Narayana having a mother and father. Ram has brothers. We don't have a situation where Narayana has brothers. He has expansions, the Chaturvyuha expansions, and according to Padma Purana, the other brothers of Ram are paraphernalia or symbols of Vishnu in the hands of Narayana, but they're not brothers. They're his weapons and his potencies. So there's an intimacy within Ayodhya Dham that's not yet the same as in Golokadam, but it's very exalted. The next image here is a very nice image of Valmiki composing Ramayana. And there we see on the left-hand corner, that's Lord Brahma instructing Valmiki to compose Ramayana. And in the background, we see a hunter with his bow drawn. We see two krancha birds, which he shot with his arrow. And what Valmiki did one morning, he went to a different river than he normally would go to for taking his morning bath. And when he was there, he saw something that angered him. He saw the hunter firing an arrow at the two cruncha birds or cranes that were mating, and he shot one of the birds. And Valmiki became very angry. Now, so you just don't become angry. But unbecoming, unlike his normal conduct, he spoke words of anger. And those words of anger stuck in his mind. And the other, Bharadraj and the others that were with him, also became concerned about and attracted to the meter. So he continued his morning duties and was meditating on that verse because it just came spontaneously from his mouth, the Sanskrit verse. And that Sanskrit verse captured his attention. Now, those who are learned in poetry, they know this is Anushtup meter. It's mentioned directly in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The meter has 32 syllables, 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, making 4 lines. And he then was meditating and meditating and meditating on that verse. And that's when Brahma came and instructed him. It is I who inspired you to become angry. It is I who inspired those words to come from your mouth. And I am requesting you to compose an entire description of the life of Lord Ramachandra. So in the course of this explanation, Brahma said, you will not only know the pastimes of Lord Ram, but you will see them before your eyes. You will enter the hearts of each of the persons and feel their feelings. And with that, all of that, you'll be able to write this Ramayana. And this Ramayana will be celebrated in mankind for as long as there is creation. And it's a long creation. It's a celebrated literature. Here's another image, a drawing of Valmiki. Brahma composed a 1 million verse Ramayana, celebrated by our own Lord Brahma. He instructed it in its entirety to Narada. Narada instructed it in a summary form in the beginning of Valmiki Ramayana to Valmiki, and 24,000 verses of this Anushtup meter, each verse having 4 lines, each line with 8 syllables, and that was the format, mostly, some exceptions, mostly throughout the whole of Ramayana. And in that Ramayana, so I was listening to a recording the other day. Prabhupada was in London, and one of the persons in the audience said, it was a Scotsman, because Prabhupada asked, where are you from? From Scotland. He said, you've answered some questions of some of the younger people here. Would you be willing to answer a question to an older fellow? And Prabhupada said, neither he is young nor are you old. Pandita Samadarshana. So then he asked his question and said, do you accept Mahabharata, the Upanishads, and Vedanta Sutra as authority? And Prabhupada said, they're written by Vyas. So of course I accept them as authority. And then pause, and he said, and Valmiki Ramayana. Prabhupada put Valmiki Ramayana in the same category as Vyasa's literature, although many of you already know, but there are multiple Ramayanas. Even during the time when Shukadeva Goswami spoke the Bhagavatam, there were multiple Ramayanas, some authorized and some not. And since then, many more. But this is our gold standard from our founder Acharya, at least, the Valmiki Ramayana. Um, because this is Lord Ram's appearance day, we'll go to that section where Dasarath, having ruled for 60,000 years, that's a long time. He was old. But a little sharing. This is not exactly on the topic, but it's a question came. Here's some facts. Prabhupada said many times, Valmiki underwent austerity for 60,000 years. Dasarath ruled for 60,000 years. And the age of personalities within the Treta Yuga is 10,000 years. So how does that work? And then we're going to hear shortly, Sumantra heard in a previous Satya Yuga a story from Sanat Kumar, foretelling what would happen when Dasarath got to the point where he would be anxious for having sons. So there's three personalities. Did they A or B? And the answer is it could be either. A, they were born in Satya Yuga and then spanning over till the transition into Treta Yuga, they existed during some parts of both, thus 60,000 years. B, in the beginning of Treta Yuga, lifespan is longer. Towards the end, it becomes shorter. So B possibility is, and the duration of Treta Yuga is really long, 1 million something. So it's quite possible they were both, all three, fully within Treta Yuga. And Sumantra heard from someone who heard from Sanat Kumar. So far, I haven't gotten anything definitive from those who are scholars. You have it?
No, I don't, but I listened to your class last night.
Can we have a portable microphone so our remote people can hear? You were listening to class last night.
You were also broaching this subject last night in the class.
Yes, I was.
And Vedic time things are something that I don't know. I get kind of ticked off on them and try to figure out how all that works. But who's to say they were just on the Earth planet when they were doing their meditations or meetings, etc.? It also describes the sages being able to elevate themselves and moving around. Pradama Muni did it. He built his own planet and flew around the whole universe.
What about Sumantra? What about Dasarath? So, back to our narration. As you see at the bottom, he had three principal queens, but contemporary with Dasarath was Lord Parshuram. And Parshuram was on a warpath with his chopper. And 350 times there was a word that Parshuram is going to come to Ayodhya and chop you. So Dasarath knew that one of Parshuram's rules was when there's a wedding going on, he won't chop somebody. So he married 350 times just to stop Parshuram from chopping, according to Valmiki Ramayana. And so he had 353 wives, but he had no son. And that was a problem for a king of the nobility and quality of Dasarath. So he was contemplating, and he thought of an idea that an Ashvamedha Yajna should be performed. So he requested his charioteer, Sumantra. Now I was looking for a nice image of Sumantra. The only one I could find is this one. So there's Sumantra, the charioteer with the red turban on his head. He was simultaneously a charioteer and a minister. So here's another image. He was sent to invite Vashishta to come see the king. Vashishta came because Vashishta didn't live in the kingdom. He lived in a little hermitage outside. Vashishta came before the king, heard the king's idea, approved of the idea in principle, an Ashwamedha Yajna. And then separately, Sumantra took the king to the side and shared with him this very interesting narration. It's a prophecy of what would happen. And according to Valmiki Ramayana, this conversation between Sanat Kumar and some rishis took place in the previous Satya Yuga. And Sanat Kumar explained long, long ago, Lord Brahma had a number of sons, one of whom was Kashyapa Muni. And Kashyapa Muni was one of the Prajapatis. And Kashyapa Muni was at one time meditating on sunlight. And as he was meditating on sunlight, in his mind appeared a thought of a person. And immediately a person manifested who was given the name Vibhandaka. So he's a mental-born son of Brahma. No mother, just born from the mind of Kashyapa. And Vibhandaka was engaged in ugra tapasya, very severe austerities. So severe that Lord Indra became very anxious, thinking, oh, maybe he wants to take over my position as king of heaven. And he knew that Vibhandaka's capacity for austerities was really great. So he didn't just send a heavenly society girl, he went to Lord Brahma's abode. Apparently, the demigods have that capacity to travel like that. He presented his concern before Lord Brahma and made a very specific request. Here in Brahmaloka, there are very, very elevated ladies. Could you send one of them to accompany me and make an attempt to break the austerities of Vibhandaka? Brahma consented. And that damsel from the heavenly realm, not the heavenly realm, from Brahmaloka, was named Harsha. Harsha was very obedient to Brahma, and so she accepted the service, and she was accompanying Indra to the hermitage place of Vibhandaka down here on this earth planet. And in the course of travel, Harsha said, because of my, there's some water, because of my mystic power, I can understand Vibhandaka has absolutely no interest in anything material. Not only that, he's so powerful, if he curses me, I'll instantly burn into ashes. So Indra was thinking she's trying to back out. So he appealed to her. Yeah. Please, however, by some means or another, thank you. Please make your best effort. My interest is that his power of austerity be broken. So please do what you can do. She said, I'm risking my life, but on the order of Brahma, I'm ready. So when they reached the area of Vibhandaka's ashram, he was engaged in meditation. So she, being very intelligent, she started chanting Vedic mantras because she was very learned in Vedic mantras. And hearing these Vedic mantras being chanted, Vibandaka heard. It broke his meditation. He had never heard such eloquent chanting of Vedic mantras. It's otherworldly, which it was. And so he saw Harsha and he asked, who are you? And what do you want from me? And her reply was, you're an all-seeing rishi. You certainly know why I have come. I have come to receive a son from you. And this is my only desire. I don't have any other desire. And because I'm making this request, you're obliged to accept my request. And if you don't, then I'll fast until death, and you'll be responsible for killing a Brahmani, Brahmahatya. She went right to the top. So Vibandaka said, I have no interest in any worldly affairs. Because of your request, I'll deposit some of my seed here and then I'm leaving. So he did that. By her mystic power, she transferred that seed from Vibandaka, let's put it here, and placed it in the womb of a female deer. And the way that it works, apparently, with these kinds of arrangements is the very next morning, the deer gave birth to a child that had a male body but had horns of a deer. And so she named him Rishishringa. And that next morning, the deer went to the place where Vibandaka was engaged in meditation. He saw the deer. She motioned with her head. He followed. He took her, she took him to where Rishishringa was, and he understood right away, this is my son. So he accepted Rishishringa as his son and trained him in the same way, austere practices. And he decided this young boy should not even see a woman. In fact, he didn't even see other people of any kind because they were living deep in the forest. Now, meanwhile, back in Ayodhya, before these 4 sons of Dasrath were born, Kaushalya gave birth to a daughter. And the daughter's name was Shanta. And Shanta grew up in the care of Kaushalya and Dasrath. But Dasrath had a dear friend. His dear friend was the king of Anga. The king of Anga traveled to several-day journey to where Ayodhya was and made a request. I've been very much, you're desirous of a son, I'm desirous of a daughter. Can you allow me to adopt your daughter and accept her as mine? And that was done in Vedic times. So Dasarath agreed. So Shanta moved as an unmarried girl to the kingdom of Anga. And that particular year, there was no rain. And there was no rain for 3 years. And there was speculation. It's because of Shanta. She brought inauspiciousness to this kingdom. So the king of Anga consulted an astrologer. And the astrologer said, it's not because of Shanta, it's because you offended a Brahmin. And the offense to the Brahmin was there was a yajna that the king had performed, and he was giving charity to Brahmanas. And as he was sorting through the diamonds that were being given to the Brahmanas, he saw one particularly attractive diamond that he liked very much. And so he removed that diamond and replaced it with a bigger one. But the Brahmana understood when he received the bag with all the diamonds, the king had cheated him. So he left. I'm not going to stay in a kingdom where there's a cheater. And all the other Brahmanas left. And when the other Brahmanas left, the yagyas to produce rain had stopped. And so there was a drought. So what to do? The astrologer said there's one thing you can do. There's a great sage in the forest named Rishishringa. If Rishishringa, who's not married, comes here and marries Shanta, then in his presence, having married your daughter, he will become the next king, and the Brahmanas will come back because Rishishringa is, a good guy, and you're the bad guy. I mean, he didn't say it like that, but so fantastic. The king of Anga said, let's bring Rishishringa. He brought in the ministers. The ministers said, oh, very difficult. Why? Because he's the son of Vibhandaka, and Vibhandaka is very intense. If he becomes angry, he could burn up the universe. He's very powerful. And so the plan was, the ministers suggested, gather together some of the society girls here in your kingdom and send them to the place where Rishishringa is. And if they entice him to come back and he comes back voluntarily, then she, your daughter, can marry Rishishringa. So that was the plan. And it took some time, but they built this fantastic boat described in Valmiki Ramayana. Have you ever seen a boat 4 miles long and 2 miles wide? No such thing. How does that even fit in the Ganges? But anyway, that's the description. And within that boat, there are forests and gardens and lakes and brushes and fountains and the whole thing. And a whole lot of society girls. And they went down the Ganges and reached a place near where Vibhandaka's ashram was. And they made a little camp for temporary residence. And as fate would have it, one day Vibhandaka heard another sage crying for help. No one else heard, but he heard. And according to Valmiki Ramayana, he was stuck in the mouth of an elephant. Poor sage. So Vibhandaka went immediately to rescue and said to Rishishringa, you take care of the sacrifices just as I have taught you, and I'll be back shortly. But he didn't come back really shortly because after that problem was another problem. But Vibhandaka to the rescue. So he was gone for some time. And while he was gone, he was out in the forest one day gathering articles for the sacrifice. And lo and behold, he saw the little place where the society girls had their camp. And he had never seen other human beings, what to speak of ladies, and what to speak of society girl type ladies. And because I'm a sannyasi, I won't talk too much about what happened, but the painting shows. And, they were dancing and singing and offering him. He said, come back to my ashram, I'll offer you forest edibles, and because that's culture. I said, well, we don't eat those things. Here's what we eat, and so forth and so on. And he became enamored, as you can only imagine, because he's human. And when he went back to Vibhandaka's ashram, when Vibhandaka returned, he saw Rishishringa didn't look normal. Here's a carving on the side of a building showing there's Rishishringa on the left with horned antlers and a human body, and then there's the society girls petitioning him on the right. So when Vibhandaka saw his son looking weird or disturbed or different, he asked him what happened. Rishishringa told everything. He didn't exactly know, because he was not worldly. He just described the features of these ladies. And um, that's the difference between what he was before and what he is now. So Vibhandaka was very angry. I'm going to find them and curse them. So he went out to look for them. He was gone for some time. Um, when he was gone, Rishishringa, his mind was attracted to the ladies, and so he went to their place once again. And apparently there was one particular, the best amongst them, lady that he was particularly attracted to. And they persuaded him to get on the boat and go back to the place where they stay. And it's really nice, you're going to like it. And so off they went back on the boat to the kingdom of King of Anga. And Rishishringa was married to Shanta. And all of that sounds really nice, except Vibhandaka could understand what happened. So he became very angry. Very, very angry. I'm going to go to this. He went by foot to the capital of the kingdom of Anga with the intent of cursing the king. So the king was very wise. He not only married his daughter Shanta to Rishishringa, but he also spread the word. He's the next king. And so everyone was trained when Vibhandaka started approaching that they would call the name of Rishishringa. So when Vibhandaka was coming and he saw the cowherds and, where am I, how far away to the capital, the king Rishishringa is that away. So he put two and two together and got four. That means I can't curse the king because that would be inauspicious for now the new king, Rishishringa. And so he cooled off. It was too late. It's already a done deal. He was married and is the new incumbent king. And in the conclusion of this story, Samantra explained to Dasarath that Rishishringa will grant 3 boons. This is Sanat Kumar telling this prophecy. There will be 3 boons for Dasarath: the successful execution of the sacrifice, the Ashvamedha sacrifice to have sons. 4 sons with immeasurable prowess will come, and at the end of his life, Dasarath will ascend to heaven. Wow. Dasarath was really happy hearing from Sumantra all of this prophecy. So since it was his daughter, Shanta, who was at the king of Anga's kingdom, he immediately arranged to go visit him. And he was nicely received by the king, and Rishishringa agreed. The king agreed, Rishishringa agreed, and Shanta went with Rishishringa, and they went back to Ayodhya to perform 2 yagyas. It was Rishishringa's idea, not just an Ashvamedha yagya, but a Putra Kameshti yagya. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. So Vashishta made all the arrangements, and it's a really long ordeal. An Ashvamedha yagya takes over a year just to set it up, the horse and this and that, lots of details. And when that yagya was completed, they were ready for the second one, the Putra Kameshti yagya. And the Putra Kameshti yagya involves offering oblations into the sacrificial fire in the name of various demigods. So the various demigods were assembled in the sky above the yajna, although not seen by worldly people, they were there. And um, as they were assembled, they started having a discussion amongst themselves. And the discussion amongst themselves was to Lord Brahma, who you see in the upper left corner, saying, you by the benedictions you've given to Ravana, we're helpless. He's terrorizing the three worlds. And please consider what's best to bring a solution to this problem. And Brahma said, after contemplating, when I gave this benediction to Ravana, he neglected to mention protection from human or from animals. So if Lord Vishnu can appear in this world as a human, then problem solved. He can destroy Ravana. So Vishnu appeared before them. There you see, there's Lord Vishnu in the center, the various devas surrounding him. There's another interesting painting. And he commits, just at this very moment, I will be making my appearance as the son of Dasarath, but not only me, but with my expansions, Vasudeva, Pradumna, Sankarshan, and Aniruddha, and everything will be all right. So you can return to your abode. Brahma then informed them, the demigods, that we can assist Lord Vishnu in this pastime by making arrangements for children to be produced by each of you in the world of monkeys. And that's how the Vanaras came to be. And he gave stipulations of the qualities they should have, shape changing, unlimited prowess, and so on. So that's the Vanara prediction. And now back to the yajna, the Putra Kameshta yajna. At the right time, one celestial luminous being rose from the sacrificial fire and presented to Dasarath the payasam. And the payasam was then to be distributed to his three queens. And by the arrangement of distributing the payasam to the three queens, then 4 sons would be born, as another celebrated, or painting of the celebrated event. So there's the 3 queens behind him. And as we know, of course, there's different Ramayanas, but the Valmiki Ramayana indicates that he divided it in the following way. Half of the payasam was given to Kaushalya, and thus Ram was born as the son of Kaushalya. And one of the queens received twice. That's why she had twins. So of the remaining half was given to her, and the remaining half was given to Kaikeyi, and the final portion was given to the third queen. And so in course of time, 4 sons were born, exactly according to the prophecy of Sanat Kumar and related to Samantra. And so we're celebrating the appearance of Lord Ramachandra in this very complicated and intricate manner, with involving many, many different people in the whole arrangement. Now, one question came in our discussion with the Chinese devotees, because they're also celebrating Ram Navami the same day that we are. And there was a class on Monday evening our time, or Monday morning our time, Monday evening their time. Why did Lord Brahma do this? Because it's not moral. He knew what the intention of Indra was, and so send a single woman, a Brahmani, to go, have union with Vibandaka? Why did Brahma agree to that? And the only answer I could think of is Brahma already knew in advance. He had composed 1 million verses of Ramayana before there was even Ramayana, before there was even Ram. So he knew the whole story. And he's just going along with the plan of the Supreme Lord. Because the Supreme Lord can have whatever plan he wants. And it may not be the kind of plan that we think he should have. But Brahma had his role to play because Rishi Shringa had his role to play because of the very intricate story of how Ram was born. Now, Ram could have been born some other way, any other way, according to his plan. And perhaps there are other explanations in other cycles of the yugas. By the way, this is a detail. According to Laghu Bhagavatamrita and according to Kurma Purana, both, Lord Ram appears in the 24th cycle of yugas during the reign of Vaivasvata Manu. Krishna appears in the 28th yuga cycle in the reign of Vaivasvata Manu. So it's not just this is Kali Yuga, and then before that is Krishna's appearance in Dwarpa Yuga, and before that was Ram's appearance in Treta Yuga. I always had that understanding until I read these references. So there's time is very interesting. And cycles of time are very interesting. But it's as if it doesn't really matter in one sense. It could be just the same yuga cycle, although it's not. Because the story of Ram and the glories of Ram and the pastimes of Ram last as long as the planet exists, not just a particular Manu or a day of Brahma or anything. It's an eternal pastime. His Bhoma Leela, at least. And they're very interesting and very instructive. So let's see if there's some discussion on this topic. It's 22 after the hour. Comments or questions? Anyone?
So Maharaj, out of those 14 exile years, how many years Sita Devi was sent to Valmiki's hermitage?
How many years what?
Sita Devi was staying at the hermitage of Valmiki.
That question came up last night. It was asked a little differently, but that's a good question also. The question was from last night, after Ram returned to Ayodhya and became the king, how long before Sita was sent to the ashram of Valmiki? Now, your question is after sent to the ashram of Valmiki, how long did she stay at the ashram of Valmiki? And there's not any, I'll research, I'll ask those that are like scholars in Ramayana to answer that question. But the children were born. She was pregnant when she went. The children were born. The birth procedure was performed by Valmiki himself. And when they were still very young, so how many years? A few years, perhaps. But I'll see if it's known. That's when she entered the earth. Does that address your question, correct? Okay. I'll see if our scholars know how many years or what period of time she stayed in Valmiki's ashram before she left.
Maharaj,
Yes.
I have heard that Ram and Sita ruled Ayodhya for 10,000 years, and thereafter he sent Sita to Valmiki's ashram. So the last 1,000 years he was ruling without Sita.
And do you know the pramana for that?
I can look it up. Yeah.
Please,
Yeah.
please. I've learned, it's particularly, for me at least, it's particularly sensitive with, I heard. Because there are people who speak about Ramayana that are just, scholarly people, or not even scholarly people, just good storyteller people that make up stories and they write books about stuff there's no pramana for it. It's like folklore. Then it falls into the category of, oh, this is folklore. So I'm a little, you know me, I'm a little fussy about or stickler about where's the source. Another question came up that I'm satisfied with the answer and the source, and that is there a particular significance behind why 14 years? Why not 15? Why not 6? Why not something? And the answer came from Shubha Vilas. And so I asked him where to hear it from, and he said he heard it from Narayana Acharya, a Sri Vaishnava scholar and authority on the Ramayana. So he directly heard it from him. That in Treta Yuga, there was a rule. Now, I don't know if it's in Manu Samhita or something, but in Treta Yuga, there's a rule that says if someone occupies land for 14 years and no one else claims it, they become the legal owner, lawful owner of that land. And then in the next yuga, it's 13 years, and in Kali Yuga, it's 12 years. So that's why 14. Mantra had calculated. Even if there was some challenge and there's a lawful arrangement that Bharata would be the king. There's the practical other, if he's gone for that long, the people get used to Bharata being in charge, and they'll be happy even when Ram comes back that Bharata is in charge. But the people are too much attracted to Ram right now, so he has to go away. But that's the 14 significance. And there is some pramana for it, at least, a respected scholar of Ramayana in the Sri Vaishnava tradition. Something else. You have something? No. Okay. Anything online?
Hare
We have
Krishna,
something
Guru.
online.
One question, one comment, not question. Hare Krishna, Gurudeva.
Remove your mask so I can hear you better.
This is just a comment. I heard Ramayana several times from my birth, since I was young, and I never heard the complete story of Rama's birth, other than demigods praying the Vishnu. So it was amazing to hear you with the complete details on how Rama's birth has taken place. Thank you very much.
The explanation comes from various sources. From some source from Mahabharata, some from Vishnu Purana. Okay? It's not all Valmiki Ramayana. That's why you didn't hear it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Gurudeva.
Okay. Online? Give her the microphone.
There's a question from Giridhar Govindarajan. Curious to know why Dasharatha did not go back to Godhead, Ayodhyadham, after death. He died remembering Lord Rama on his deathbed.
Yeah, and chanting his name. So, how Mahabharata and Ramayana describe the destination of souls is a little different than our understanding from the Bhagavatam. He's an eternal associate. There's no question. He's his father in Ayodhya, in the spiritual world. So he didn't just go to heaven. But that's how it's described in Ramayana. Okay? Next.
Next question is from Shriya Devi Dasi. Is Sage Vibandaka same as Sage Mrigi?
Yeah. Yes. That's it. Shri Ramachandra Mahamahotsava ki jai.